Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology.
Welcome everyone to the Blacks in Technology BITTechTalk podcast. I'm your host, Greg Greenlee, the founder of the Blacks in Technology organization. This is a podcast show where we talk to Black women and men who are engineers, innovators, educators, inventors, change makers, and entrepreneurs doing amazing things in the world of technology. This podcast is where we share their stories, experiences, ideas, knowledge, and perspective on tech with the BIT community. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, you can check us out the following URLs. We're at www.blacksintechnology.net. That's our main website. We are also on the Twitters at Black in Technology, and that's spelled BLKINTECHNOLOGY. We're also on Facebook and LinkedIn under Blacks in Technology and Instagram under Blacks in Technology. So Blacks in Technology is a tech-focused community and media organization, and we're dedicated to increasing the representation and participation of Black women and men in the technology industry. We always focus on forming new partnerships and opportunities to assist our members with their continued professional growth and development. So if you want to partner with us, if you want to sponsor one of these podcasts, send us an email to contact us at blacksintechnology.net. So tonight, our guest is Afua Bruce. She spent her career developing and applying technology in service of the public interest. She is currently the Director of Engineering for New America's Public Interest Technology Program. At New America, Afua oversees a team of technologists working with state and local government. And we're going to delve into her background and what she's currently working on and her journey throughout her career. So I want to introduce Afua Bruce. Afua, thanks for joining the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you tonight.
Thank you. Definitely appreciate it. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into the Q&A. And so, traditional starting question is, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us, kind of where you're from, your education, your background.
Sure. I was born in Tennessee, but have lived in 9 or 10 states right now, mostly in the South, in the Midwest, and in the Northeast. I did my undergraduate degree in computer engineering from Purdue University, and my graduate degree is an MBA from the University of Michigan. I've had the opportunity in my career to work in a variety of different sectors and places. At IBM in Austin, Texas, at the White House, at the FBI, and now at New America, a think tank based in DC.
So I want to delve into kind of a little bit on how you actually got started in technology. Like what drove you to technology, and then kind of like why did you choose software engineering as your path in tech?
Yeah, I always liked technical things growing up. When I was a young child, I liked playing with electronic cars and playing around on the computer and taking some computer classes and programming classes at my high school. And so that was really where my interest began, as a child, just really liking to be on computers and playing with electronics. When it came time to pick a major, I knew I wanted to do something with computers. And honestly, I was deciding between computer engineering and computer science. And I'd heard from someone, I couldn't even tell you whom at this point, but I heard from someone that computer engineering was more difficult than computer science. And so I selected computer engineering with the thought that if it was too difficult, I could always drop out and become a computer scientist. Whether or not that's actually true about computer engineering and computer science, I still don't know to this day, but that is how I ended up with a computer engineering major over computer science.
I can attest to that because when I started out, when I first went to college, I went to a local community college, and so I chose computer network engineering, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought I looked at computer networking, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, this will be more about putting together computer networks and kind of how they operate and things like that. And I didn't really, I guess, understand the engineering part of it. So when I got to some, start filling out my schedule, and I started seeing some of these classes, and you start seeing like what the engineering portion really entails, like the low level, the subcomponents of computers and microprocessors and things like that. And that's kind of where that engineering, and then I had to take like electrical engineering classes and things like that. So all that is what was encompassed in my curriculum. But at the time, I'm thinking like, oh, this would be more about networking and systems administration, and I was totally wrong. So, and I would say I haven't taken computer science, so I can't say like if it's harder, but I would probably put it up there as far as difficulty with computer science, if not more difficult, because engineering is it's pretty rigorous.
I would agree. I think also, at least at Purdue, the way the computer engineering program is structured, you have to deal with both hardware and software, and so just
Exactly.
learning both sides of things. Computer science, I'm sure the computer scientist will tell us, is just as difficult and just as challenging in its own way.
Right.
But computer engineering ended up being a really good fit for me.
So let me ask you this, like, and this is my recollection from my days at doing computer network engineering. Were you doing things like building out circuits using breadboards and like integrated chips and hooking up power supplies and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, definitely in the classroom and while on campus, I had my breadboard kit that I carried around campus and brought home over the summer and tried to teach my youngest sister, who's 7 years younger than me,
Wow.
years of circuits. She was not impressed. To this day, she still but definitely get to do all that. Also, with the software engineering side, spent a lot of time with algorithms and programming as well.
Nice.
I co-ops all through undergrad, so spending every other semester at IBM working full time. And most of my internships there ended up being on the software side. I'd had one hardware internship and or hardware co-op, and with the hours and recognizing that hardware meant you had to be in the lab all the time, I decided I was going to focus on the software side instead.
Yeah, good pick. I had a couple of electronics classes, and we had like adjunct professors, right? So they would come in and they would tell us about like, hey, like this is what you'll be doing, and you might be replacing like circuit boards and troubleshooting integrated circuits, and I'm just like, no, I'm good with that. That's not what that's not what I want to do all
Right.
day is replace circuit boards. But
Exactly.
so tell me, who like did you have any early influences, like someone that kind of drove you or even gave you the opportunity or presented the opportunity for you to like get into technology?
Yeah, I was really fortunate in that both of my parents had technical backgrounds. My parents immigrated to the US from Ghana, West Africa. And if you know anything about West Africans, especially Ghanaians who emigrated at that time frame, science and technology, engineering and math are like the chosen professions. Um,
Mm,
maybe you can be a doctor, that's fine, but definitely an engineer is up there on the list. My father had his undergraduate degree in chemical engineering. My mother had a PhD in plant and soil sciences. And so they were both extremely supportive of making sure that I was in the library, in a lab, trying out experiments at home to get exposed to technology.
very nice. Big up to your parents.
Yes, definitely.
So tell me, you received your MBA from the University of is that Michigan, right?
Yes, yes, go blue.
I'm from Ohio, so like we're
I
mortal enemies.
did not realize that. I'm now somewhat questioning this interview, but continue.
Right. So tell me, like, what were some of the factors in this? Because some people will say, like, oh, like I just went through this rigorous engineering curriculum. Like that's enough for me. But you decided to go back and pursue a degree in business. Like, tell us, like, what was some of the factors in deciding to go back, and then tell me kind of give us some examples on how it actually helped your career as an engineer.
Yeah. So actually, when I was in high school, I got it into my head that someday I wanted to be a technology CEO. I don't actually know where this idea came from because I did not know any technology CEOs at all. But somehow this is something that I decided that I wanted to do. And so in high school, I looked into it a bit and saw that a lot of CEOs had MBAs. And so thought, I'll get an engineering degree and then at some point get an MBA and then magically become a CEO because
Mm-hmm.
success, of course, is a straight line. And that's what you think when you're in high school.
Right.
And so, I got my undergraduate degree. I joined IBM full time and had a great time being an engineer. I really liked coding. I liked the environment. I liked writing the code. I was good at it. And so I sort of forgot about my MBA aspirations for a while. But then, as you're in the workplace and you have different managers, you see different executives, you start to realize characteristics of managers or executives that you like and are effective and ones that are perhaps less effective. And I realized that the ones that were most effective were ones that had, yes, the manager title, yes, the executive title and the business acumen, but they also had a technical understanding because they'd been engineers at one point. At the same time, I was being given more responsibility and starting to lead teams and to get exposed to project management and release management within IBM. And I recognized that I liked that work and I was good at it too. And so I started to remember my high school dreams of getting an MBA and decided at one point it was time. IBM allowed me to take a leave of absence from IBM to go full time to get my MBA, in which I moved from Texas to Michigan to do that.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, and I know it's not the pathway for everybody, but just having a basic knowledge of business can really help in your career, especially because it's being in a DevOps engineer. Like, I had to understand like why I was doing what I was doing and how it provided value to the business. And if you can't like kind of quantify like what you're doing to business values, then you can be in some serious trouble, right? So having that business mindset, or at least understanding the business side of it, can really help you progress in your career. So.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Having that business mindset of how what you do ties to how the organization that you're in, if you're in the
Yeah.
private sector, makes money is
Hmm.
crucial because that's, of course, what people look at for promotions and
Right.
keeping you there through rounds of layoffs and the like. Also, for me, going to business school opened up a whole new world of opportunities for me. My path and before was strictly large company, private sector work, and that's how I ended up at IBM. But being in business school, I got exposed to a wider range of opportunities, and that's actually how I ended up making the switch from the private sector to the government sector, which really just changed my view of how technology can be used and the types of way that I could make an impact with an engineering degree.
Very nice. And I think the other side of that whole thing is that people, especially engineers, they tend to focus solely on like the engineering side of it, and that's an easy way to kind of lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing, and which can make you easily expendable, right? Like if you're not tying what you're doing to like the business value, then that means that it's easy to get rid of you. Like, oh, this person isn't really doing anything that is increasing or helping or working towards the value of the business. It's like, why do we need them to be here in the first place, right?
Right.
So excellent, excellent. So, in speaking, I think that's a speaking about in IBM. I think that's a good segue into our next set of questions. about IBM. You started your career as a software engineer there. So what was it? What was it like? Working for what's not only one of the oldest technology companies, but also one of the largest.
Yeah, IBM, at the time I was there, had, I think, about 400,000 employees worldwide.
Oh,
Give or take a couple tens of thousands maybe, but a lot of employees, right? At that number, you're not
right,
really keeping track. Certainly as an employee, you're not really keeping track. And um, because also of just how long IBM's been around, and at the time I joined, it had gone through its pivot, right, of its downturn in
yeah,
in the 90s, and then restructuring. Blue Gerstner, in his book How Elephants Can Dance, something along those lines,
hmm,
and then in turning around and repositioning itself. And so what I really appreciated about IBM was just this culture of continued learning and continued adaptability. I think that because it had been around so long, because they have a huge focus on research, but also on just figuring out the best ways to make money, it's a
right,
really good environment to really develop your skills and to be trained as to how do you become a good engineer? How do you get exposed to the sales side if you want, to project management if you want, to all of these different areas that they have because they're so massive. And so I really appreciated that about IBM. Also, I was based in Austin for all of the time. I was a full time IBM employee, and they had a lot of diversity networking groups, which I found incredibly valuable as a way to find mentors and just friends and supporters as I developed my career. Being just out of undergrad, I
hmm,
could not have succeeded without having mentors, and
right.
bridging the diversity networking groups really helped. Go from we have so many people on campus to let me have a handful of people who I can reach out to help guide and shape my career.
Nice. And how did IBM kind of coordinate that internally? Like as far as let's just say you're a software engineer, you kind of want to be exposed a little bit to like the sales side. Like what were some of the what was the structure? Like what were some of the mechanisms they put in place in order to enable you?
Yeah, so there are a couple of different ways, or there were at that time. It's now been several years since I left IBM, so I'm not sure what's still there and what's not. One is just through the different diversity networking groups. There's a
Hmm.
Toastmasters club that I was heavily involved with. Also, just meeting people from throughout the organizations, you could start to hear about other types of positions. And there was something at the time called Blue Opportunities, IBM being
Hmm.
Big Blue, Blue Opportunities, or something that allowed you to, with management support, spend some time, sometimes as short as one day or one week, sort of shadowing some person elsewhere in the organization. And so
Right.
on a couple of occasions, I was able to meet someone somewhere, have some interesting conversations, and then sit in on some of their meetings or calls or some aspect of what they did for several hours just to give me some exposure as to what else IBM did.
Nice, nice. And real quick, can you touch on uh, how you uh, how you actually found like mentors and kind of like how you got the best out of like your interactions or your engagements with your mentors? Like, what were some of the steps that you utilize in order to make sure that you maximize not only their time but your time as well?
Yeah, I think building protective mentor mentee relationships is something that a lot of people strive to do, but a lot of people also struggle with.
Right.
And so for me, I think I got some good advice early on in my time at IBM, which was to think of it not just as finding a mentor and trying to find the perfect mentor, but rather building instead for myself essentially a personal board of directors. And so then it became less a question of how do I find the perfect person for me to help guide me in every aspect of my career, to
Mhm.
how do I find people with different skill sets, with different perspectives, with different levels, who are different levels in their career that I can reach out to at whatever frequency makes sense. So maybe it's I met an executive through a networking event and I would reach out once a year to talk to that person versus a former team lead that I work for who we might have lunch on a monthly basis.
Right.
And I also look for people, again, who had differing skills for my personal board of directors. So who could help me technically, who could help me with my communication, who could just help me with a big picture. They've been at IBM for 20 years and they know lots of people, lots of career paths, and could help me big picture. And through one of those mentors, actually, that's how I ended up going back to business school. Is at some point I was just describing some of my challenges and some of my dreams. And over lunch, she just looked at me and said, "You're going back to business school this year." I was like, "Excuse me?" I was like, "Yep, that's what we're going to do. We're going to work on it and you will be in business school." And sure enough, a year later, I enrolled in business school. And so mentors, I think, can also, if you can work with them and they're good, can spur you on to push you a little further than you thought was possible for
Right. And I love what you said about your own personal board of directors. I think a lot of times when people talk about like, hey, they talk about being mentored, it's usually singular, right? Like they usually are talking about having one person or one mentor, which there's nothing wrong with just having one person. I don't think there's any like a wrong way to have someone mentor you, but having, like you said, kind of like that diverse skill set and the diverse backgrounds of the people, and having them operate as kind of like your personal board of directors. That's a really good way to maximize their time and your time, because you may not be able to get in contact with that mentor as often as you would like, and so having it spread across a number of different people will give you the opportunity to say, okay, so I may need advice at this time, I may need advice at this time, and then you can bounce around from mentor to mentor in order to get that advice. So I think that's excellent.
Yeah, it's been a really useful framework for me throughout my career.
Excellent. So I guess it kind of like the Big Blue or IBM. I said Big Blue, but IBM has this reputation of being like really super corporate. I remember there's a movie called Pirates of Silicon Valley, and there's this scene where um, the guy playing Steve Jobs is it's in the office and he's interviewing like this former IBM or a guy that presently worked at IBM, and he was interviewing for a job at Apple. And Steve Jobs kind of like gave him the business about about working for IBM. And just if you're in tech and you hear about IBM and you hear about kind of like their really corporate nature. Can you tell us like what did you experience that like while you were there, and kind of what was like some of the things that you liked the most about working in that type of environment, and what you like the least?
Yeah, I do not think I experienced IBM corporate culture in the way that it's often depicted in movies or television shows. I would say, especially being an engineer, it's casual dress, they have foosball tables and snacks and all of that stuff. Not to the extent of a Google or Facebook,
Right.
but it's a fairly relaxed environment among engineers. If you're going to do technical sales or marketing or something else, then it's a bit different. But for engineers, it's a pretty relaxed environment in my experience. I think one of the things looking back that I really appreciated about IBM is that yes, everyone worked really hard, sometimes seemingly all the time, but also there was a culture about having work-life balance or work-life integration, as they called it at the time I was there. And so this meant that, I would have a female manager or second line manager who would leave every day at 3 o'clock to go pick up her kids, but then she was back online at 6 p.m., 7 p.m., or something like that, because, you
Right.
just need to do what you need to do. I really liked volunteering. And so I was able to, be a mentor at a local school through actually an IBM mentoring program. And again, leave during the day to be able to do that with the expectation that I would make up my hours and work some other time. But having that work-life integration,
Right.
in my experience, was just part of the IBM culture. And so that was something that, looking back, I especially really appreciate.
It's so funny. Like that type of that mythos about IBM kind of still exists, and I find it kind of, and maybe they do, and maybe I'm just not aware of it. But I kind of find it kind of funny that they have not done like a campaign to kind of bust that entire myth up. Like, this is what it's really like to work at IBM. It's not what's been said about us.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a really interesting point. I will say that it is much more formal, again, when you get out of the engineering environment, and probably also when you're not in Austin, Texas.
right.
But I looked at IBM when I was in business school, and IBM does a
Mhm.
lot of consulting, and so it's a lot more formal with MBAs and people who are on the consulting side of wearing
Right.
the suits every day and things like that. So I think, again, with a 400,000 person organization, there's a lot of variation depending on where you are.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I know a lot of financial institutions kind of that they have that same type of mythos about them. Like, because I myself, I'm just like, hey, I'm at this point in my career, I'm not wearing a suit to be an engineer. Like that's
Right.
or like like I'm going and with jeans. Like and me, I like I like to look nice, so I'm not going in there, all scruffy and things like that. So there's occasion, times where I'm wearing like jeans and a button-up shirt and maybe a sports jacket or something like that. But it's up to my discretion on whether or not I want to do that. Like I don't have to dress like that. And it amazes me that there are still places that require like their engineers. Because I've interviewed at a couple of financial institutions, and the recruiter is like, "You need to wear a suit." And I'm just like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to go. If I have to wear a suit, then nah, I'm good. That's not for me.
It's part of the balance and finding an environment where you feel like you're going to be successful.
Yeah, yeah. So let's switch to your time at the FBI. Yeah, tell us a little bit. Like, how were you recruited? Like, how does the FBI find? Because it sounds like at least it always sounds like the FBI has to come to you. Is that kind of how you got recruited, or is that
Um, that is kind of how I got recruited. Actually, the FBI
okay?
does get a lot of applications. You can go to FBIjobs.gov
Okay.
and apply for positions, both agent and non-positions, online. So people
Hmm.
are interested, they should check out FBI jobs. But the FBI, several years ago, over a decade ago now, started a program called the Special Advisor Program. And through
Hmm.
that program, they hire a handful of newly minted MBAs from top tier business schools to join the FBI, essentially as internal consultants. And so they recruited at the University of Michigan, where I got my MBA. And so my second year, again, I'd taken a leave of absence from IBM, so I'd planned on, going back to the private sector. But
Hmm.
my last year of business school, I got an email from someone at the FBI saying, "Hey, we've seen your resume. We think you'd be great for becoming an FBI special advisor." And I responded to the email, "No, thank you." And then a couple of days later, I got an email from another FBI person that said, "Hey, saw your resume. We think you'd be great." And they were coming to campus, and I was like, "This is the second email. I should probably tell them no in person because FBI."
Hmm.
And clearly, I fell for their pitch when I went to talk to them and said no in person, because, to be honest, the chance to combine my technical skills with my business skills in an organization like the FBI, where there are not that many people who have that combination of engineering and MBAs and sort of a mission orientation, Just wanting to serve just seemed really compelling. The types of challenges I think that you can see as a government employee are just unlike anything that you can see when you're not a government employee, especially going into an intel organization. So that was just really compelling to me. It is joining the FBI was certainly something I never planned when I went to business school. In fact, I said I might look around to non-IBM companies, but I'm definitely never working for the government or a nonprofit, and that's all I've worked for since business school. So. Wow. That's me and my planning. But that's at the FBI was responding to that, going through their interview process, and then getting selected to be essentially an internal consultant at the FBI. And then once there, I focused on technology, doing essentially strategy and program management within their science and technology shop.
At first, I thought you were going to say, like, after that second email, they showed up at your door, like, hey.
I don't know what I said no in the in-person. Maybe after that was them sending someone to my door, but we didn't get that far.
What's up, everyone? We hope that you're enjoying this episode of the Blacks in Technology BITTechTalk podcast. Do you or someone you know have a dope story that they want to share with our BIT audience? Blacks in Technology is seeking guests to be on our podcast. We're looking to highlight the journeys and experiences of Black women and men in the tech industry. So if you know of someone, send them our way. Shoot us an email to contact us at blacksintechnology.net or click on the link in the show notes and fill out our form. We're looking to hear from you. So what exactly did your role entail? Like, you just mentioned like what the title of the role, but like what did that actually entail?
Yeah. So the special advisor role is you're assigned to a senior executive at the FBI, and so I spent some time in their criminal investigative division, just learning how the FBI ran operations cases, essentially, and then quickly went to their operational technology division, or OTD. That's where they make all the fun spy toys that you may see on television shows and movies. And I was assigned to the executive over OTD to essentially work on strategy and program management. And so as she had questions about how do we need to organize all of these engineers in a way that's most effective, she would turn to me and say, you do organizational structure for technology, right? And I'd say, yep, sure do, and figure it out and do that. Or, there would be cases where a particular engineering project development needed some stronger project management or some help in crafting the message and interfacing with agents in the field to communicate what it is the technology capabilities are and hear back from agents what they actually need, and sort of facilitating that process, sort of like just a requirements process. And so I would work on that with specific technologies, with specific products, and with specific engineers as well.
Gotcha. So you would get like you would let them know, for instance, like, hey, we got this pen that shoots lasers. So
right. Okay. Yeah. We can use the example of a pen that shoots lasers, and so maybe it's engineers being like, we've got this amazing capability. We just designed a pen that shoots lasers, and it's awesome. Right. And I would say like, okay. Can we actually produce that again? Have we done that? And they'd be like, I'm sure we can. And I'd say, okay, like maybe let's come up with a project plan to see how we can get that done. And how much money is it going to cost? Okay, let's figure out, let's put it through the budget process at the FBI to make sure that we can actually fund it. And have you talked to some agents in the field to make sure that they can use it and they're going to use it the way that it's going to be useful? So let's do that too, and sort of facilitating that whole process. They're really doing, again, a lot of just program management, but that happens to be, in this case, with pens that shoot out lasers for agents at the FBI.
Gotcha. So, I mean, and running kind of with that whole thing, like, what are some of the common like misconceptions about the FBI that you found out were like like that's that is not true. That's not how it works. Some people might think that, of course the FBI is they have some secrecy, of course, but like there are probably some things out there that people think that happens at the FBI, like some like secret society stuff that actually is not like that. Like what's one of those things that you found out like when you got there wasn't true?
I think one of the things that really struck me, especially my first couple of years at the FBI, was how focused people are on the mission and serving the American public. So again, I was reporting to senior executives within the organization, and I heard probably at least every other week someone in a meeting somewhere saying, "Well, like, we have to do this because this is what the American people deserve. We have to do this because we have to keep America safe." And I don't think that I had recognized or appreciate just how much, individual employees, people like you and me, um,
Right.
really are who make up the FBI, and how focused people are and how deeply they care about keeping the American public safe and bringing people to justice. And so that's definitely something I didn't appreciate before, or I didn't just fully understand or grasp before joining the FBI. On a more fun note, everything just happens so quickly and efficiently and cleanly on television. And it is
Right.
not like that when you're working with real technology and real people. Also, only about a third of the employees at the FBI are agents. So most of the FBI are non-agents. And so that was also something I just hadn't realized before joining.
I mean, that's really interesting to know because I think a lot of people always think that there's something nefarious, right, happening like within the FBI. Like they're up to no good, or they're up to something nefarious to get over on the part. And in actuality, like these are people that are really really patriotic people, and they really care about their country, and they really care about the safety and the goodwill of our country. And so that's interesting to hear, and really really nice to know, because I think a lot of people probably get the wrong idea about how the FBI operates and why it operates the way it does.
Yeah, I agree.
So would you, now that you've worked at the FBI, would you recommend other people to like, take a job at the FBI, and if so, why?
Yeah, I recommend that people take a job at the FBI if, especially, I think, yes, I would definitely recommend people take a job at the FBI. Whether, you want to spend your entire career there and retire there, that's a different question.
Right.
I clearly did not make that choice for myself. But again, just especially on the technical side, some of the challenges that you see, you will not see that other places. I think
Right.
also, since leaving the FBI, I will say I recognize more just how much I appreciated being in an organization that's like legally able to like act when something happens. I remember when the Boston bombing happened, I was in a meeting with some engineers, and we're talking about, some initiatives and process that we're working on. And all of a sudden someone like looks at their phone and is like, "There's a bombing." And then of course everyone's phone goes off, and immediately people just spun into action. And because, in the Boston bombing response, there's a lot to do with video analysis, which is run out of the engineering division. So people are trying to figure that out, trying to figure out how are they getting into Boston and doing all this. And just again, seeing how quickly people sprung into action, agents, non-agents, on figuring this out, how much it was just about like something bad has happened. We have to figure it out. We have to prevent something bad from happening again
Right.
to Americans. It's just really powerful to be in that type of environment. And, now being on the outside, if something happens, it's like all I can do is call a friend to complain about it. Or,
Right.
I work at a think tank now. We write lots of, thought pieces and articles, which are important in their own way, but it's not the same as running an investigation, seeing your colleagues run an investigation or seeing your colleagues process evidence and the like.
And I think, and I know that like FBI is not running around doing like PR for the FBI, but I mean, just kind of what you just said, it makes at least in my mind, makes the FBI a lot more endearing to what I what I originally thought.
Right. I mean, I won't say the FBI is perfect in every way possible, but
Right.
it is, yes, it is an organization comprised of people like you and me, right, who never thought I'd work for the government, but ended up there anyway, who do really care about the mission.
Right. And did they allow you to take one of those laser pens with you when you left?
I'm pretty sure there are laws that govern taking random equipment from the FBI when you leave.
So let's move on to your time working as an executive director. And this is a pretty long. You were served as the executive director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy's National Science and Technology Council. That's a mouthful. At the White House.
You're putting that on a business card.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that role, kind of what some of your duties were in that role.
Sure. So
first of all, real quick, can you kind of explain like what that even is?
Yes.
Like, what is that office?
Yes, you aren't familiar. I wasn't really familiar either before I joined. But so the White House, right, is a building. And then when people say they work at the White House, there are many, many components of the White House, many, many different policy councils within and offices that comprise the White House. And so the Office of Science and Technology Policy, as you might guess, is an office dedicated to science and technology policy. And under the Obama administration, there were probably between 100 and 140 people there in a time working on all different types of science and technology policy, mainly within 4 divisions. And then there's this congressionally mandated entity called the National Science and Technology Council, or the NSTC, which is the principal way that the Office of Science and Technology Policy, OSTP, is to coordinate across the federal government, across the science and technology departments, across the federal government on policy and research agendas from the scientific and technological sides. And so this is because, something like cybersecurity, we had the NSTC is structured into committees and subcommittees and working groups. So we had a subcommittee on cybersecurity, for example. And it's structured that way because many different agencies within the federal government have some type of responsibility for cybersecurity or do something cybersecurity related. And so when you think about what does our government-wide research agenda need to be for cybersecurity, you can't just call the NSA or just call the DoD or just call the FBI. You need to put everyone together and say, basically, you all figure it out and write this research agenda, write this science and technology strategy about cybersecurity. So that's essentially how it worked. While I was the executive director, there are about 100 different committees, subcommittees, and working groups. So a lot of activity on everything from cybersecurity to plant genomics to STEM education to soil health to artificial intelligence, machine learning. 100, right? So a lot of things. And it was my responsibility to sort of juggle all of these groups, work with the appropriate people in the White House to chair these different groups and to draft research agendas or policy papers on these different topics. And so while I was there, I think we published about 50 different papers on all of these topics. Again, some cybersecurity topics, some artificial intelligence, research and development plans, harmful algal blooms is another one. Being a computer engineer, I felt really confident about the software engineering and some of the hardware engineering papers, but had to learn a lot about trusting the experts we had within the federal government, right? These are some of the best researchers or best professionals that we have working at the NIH or the National Institutes of Health or the National Science Foundation, the NSF, or other organizations, and bringing them together and just trying to shepherd those conversations when possible, and then really to manage what we called the clearance process, which is after you have all of these people on a working group together, then you have to get the paper signed off by the senior executives or the heads of the different departments. And so managing that process of different perspectives and getting everyone to sign off on the documents. And I just talked for a really long time, I realized. So, yeah, what questions?
No, so I was going to, because it sounds like um, a little bit like kind of like what an actor goes through, like as they're, because when let's just say like an actor is preparing for a certain role, right, they have to have at least a base understanding of whatever, like say for instance that specific character, if that character is in a certain profession, they have to understand like the basics of at least the lingo and things like that of that specific character, and what that character's role is. And it sounds like you had to actually kind of do like you have the software engineering part, but there's all these other different parts of the sciences and technologies and engineering. And would you say that you had to like at least get a base understanding of a lot of these different sciences and technologies?
I think through the process, I got a base understanding of a lot of the different science and technologies, just because all of the strategies or research agendas that went out had my name on them as executive director. So I read them in detail. And again, had to help go back and forth sometimes between different agencies to get sign off. I never tried to become, more than baseline proficient, right? Because I managing all of these different groups and reading, a 40-page paper would never be as smart as the 10 PhDs who are arguably the world's experts on some type of ocean science. So I had to have, just, figuring out what the right balance of time is and where your skills are. My skills were really, especially with the MBA background, were the ability to organize people, to create systems, to get to consensus, to create systems to shepherd documents through the process, and to really understand, this is where being the engineer came in, really understand how to step back and let technical people be technical people, and then sort of get out of the way when that happens. And so for me, it was really leveraging those two skill sets of mine, of like having been, an actual engineer at one point, and understanding what's intrusive and what's not, and then also having that MBA mindset of what's the strategy here, what do we need to do process wise, and how do you combine that in a way that lets technical experts be technical experts to come up with something that's really useful and is going to shape the way that the country does its research.
Gotcha. Your conversation game must be incredible then. You know a little bit about all these things. You can drop you anywhere. And
I was so fun at dinner parties while I was there. I would have all of these random facts about, if we change our farming practices, we'll be out of topsoil, which is how we grow food, in between 75 and 200 years, depending on estimates, and all of these facts about death and destruction related to science and technology that I would share at dinner parties. I really appreciated it, I'm sure.
Right. So let's switch over to public interest technology. Tell us what that program is, and kind of and what their mission is.
Yeah, so public interest technology is a relatively new term. It's an emerging field, and it really refers to the study and application of technology expertise to advance the public interest or to generate public benefits and to promote the public good. And I think of it along a spectrum often as to how to use sort of technical thinking to inform policymaking, and how can you use policies to better inform technology development. And so it's a lot of words that basically just means, how do we develop technology and policy better together? And so that is what we are doing at New America. Again, other places are doing it too. But my portfolio at New America has maybe two main categories. One is managing a team of technologists who are working across the country with state and local governments and nonprofits on doing public interest tech in areas such as foster care and criminal justice reform and the opioid epidemic and financial inclusion. And then also working with universities through the Public Interest Technology University Network, a network right now of about 21 universities who are committed to training their students and getting faculty to do research in, applying technology expertise to the public interest.
So I watched a video. I want to touch on the opioid crisis and kind of how your organization kind of ties and uses technology to help tackle the opioid epidemic. I watched a video on that and I found it very interesting. Can you kind of explain kind of like what like how you all are teaming up with some of these local and state governments to tackle that?
Yeah, so our work with the opioid epidemic was led by Jeremiah Lenderman, who worked at Esri and then was a fellow at New America's Public Interest Technology, PIT for short. It's I don't know necessarily the best acronym, but so Jeremiah came to New America with a lost loved ones map that was a national map and allowed people to go to the site and essentially put a pin on the map and upload a picture and a story about their loved one who had passed away due to an opioid overdose. And one of the goals really of this map were to let people grieve their loved ones, but also to work at changing hearts and minds as to who was actually affected by the opioid epidemic. From there, Jeremiah started working with one particular county who realized that they had a lot of different entities within the county who had some type of opioid-related data, whether it was overdoses, whether it was death information from a medical examiner, whether it was hospital information of who's been admitted to a hospital for what. But as happens in many governments, although many people are working on a similar issue, they don't necessarily share this information in an easy way across different state or government or state or county or city agencies. And so we went in that case and we were able to get access to a lot of the different data and put it all on the same map. And so now decision makers and policymakers could go to this map and see how overdoses correlated with deaths, with hospital admissions, and whatever other information we had, and see it in a visual way. So it's much more easy to interact with. And then they can actually do something with that information, such as change where outreach is done, change who's staffed where, change what resources are applied to different areas. So Jeremiah started that work in one particular county, and then more counties or cities and other jurisdictions started to hear of it. And so then we were able to work with a number of jurisdictions across the country on essentially taking that model to other places, and also in the process creating a network of jurisdictions who met on a regular basis to share information as to how to do this, what types of decisions people were making off of it, what new ways to look at the data were, what new ways were to strike data sharing agreements and the like.
Got you. This, I mean, especially from your earlier days at like IBM and things like that, this is like a total shift from the corporate side to more of doing something for the social good of of the people, right?
Right.
Like, is that something that um, that you sought out for your career? Like, hey, like I've been, I worked in this sector, I've worked in this sector. Like, I really want to do something, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like, I really want to do something that's kind of fulfilling to me as a person. Like, what was the mindset around like deciding to join public interest sector, New America?
Yeah. So for me, I now often describe myself either as an engineer or actually just as a public interest technologist, because for me, figuring out how to apply my technical expertise really for the public interest, for the public good, is just
Mm-hmm.
what I'm about now. It's To answer your question, it's not something that I necessarily sought out. It's a place that I ended up in, from that shift to the FBI and realizing how much mission can drive your work, and then seeing at the White House the importance of having strong policy and having real technical experts define our policies that affect technology, or use
Right.
technology to help write policies that affect our world. It's just really important. And then also, when I think about what it means to me to be a good citizen and a good neighbor, it's really, how do I apply my technical expertise to really help my community? And so that's what I like now. The Public Interest Technology University Network that I mentioned that New America runs is something I'm super excited about, because um, the goal is to expose college students, and both at the undergraduate and graduate level, to this idea that yes, you can go down the private sector route and just focus on that, but also an equally valid career path is applying your technical expertise to the public
Right.
good. And so I'm excited that, hopefully students can actively choose that career path when they're in college, and not just have to end up in it several years after graduating like I did.
Got you. I mean, because everyone, I think, their ideal job is to really do something that is fulfilling to them as a person, and not as well as like from a career standpoint. And it sounds like your progression in your career actually kind of lined up with your progression as a human being, right? And so you were able to kind of like kill two birds with one stone, so to speak.
Yeah, I think so. I think as I learned more about different issues that different communities face, and as I learned more about just the needs also for different organizations, it's also really now easy for me to see how my skills really align. And so that's why I am where I am.
So what's next for you?
Yeah, great question. Like I said, I really like figuring out ways to apply my technical skills to serve my community and improve my community, however community is defined at the time. So I think looking for ways to really focus on what type of technical development, what type of data analysis and data science that we can use for the nonprofit sector and the government sector, I think is what I will continue to focus on. I just strongly believe that the institutions that we've charged, government and nonprofits, the institutions that we've charged with providing critical services, deserve
Right.
the best technical talent, because in this world that we live in, where everything is driven by technology, if we believe in the services that government or nonprofits are providing, we should make sure that they are equipped to do that in ways that make sense, that are efficient, and that are using the best technology that we have available. And so, whatever part that I can play in that, and making sure that policies are developed well and can be implemented smartly with technology, making sure that nonprofit institutions have access to the data analysis or to the technical development or cybersecurity skills that they need. Whatever I can do
Mhm.
to help further that is what I want to do with my career.
And before we leave, how can others follow you? Are you on social media? If so, can you provide that to our audience?
Sure. I am on both Twitter and Instagram at Afua_Bruce, AFUA_BRUCE.
And I also want to, I definitely want to stay in contact with you. Bit is having our next conference. We just had two conferences in the past 2 years in the Twin Cities. Our inaugural conference was in 2018, and then we followed that up this past October in the Twin Cities again. But our next conference is going to be in Chicago, September. We're looking tentatively at the 23rd to the 25th. So I definitely want to keep in contact with you about opportunities to possibly speak. I don't know if you're into that, but it would be like a great opportunity, and to get in front of a really large audience. We're going to be partnering with the government of Illinois and a lot of the local companies there to bring a really cool and a really cool experience to the city. So I definitely would like to, at least keep in contact with you to keep you abreast on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I look forward to seeing you in September in Chicago. It sounds like I really respect the work that you're doing. I think it's so important to make sure that people recognize that there are plenty of Blacks in technology and that we are in a wide variety of positions in field and excelling in all of them. And so just thank you for the work that you are doing to highlight that and to create a community of Black technical professionals.
I appreciate that. And thank you for joining us tonight and sharing your journey and sharing your experiences with our audience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
And that's it for this episode of the Blacks in Technology BITTechTalk podcast. We definitely want to thank our guest, Afua Bruce. We wish her well on her journeys in the future. And hopefully we can have her at BitCon 2020 in Chicago to speak. That's it for us, and join us next time. Take care.
Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology.